Hello, welcome to Project Management, the structure. We're going to look at a sort of an overall picture here. We're going to explore terminology used in project management and explain some key elements. The first term we need to understand is the definition of what is a project. Well, according to the Project Management Institute and their body of knowledge, a project is a temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique product, service, or result. There's a couple of really key words in here, temporary and unique. Projects always must be temporary, meaning it must have a start and an end, and it must produce something unique. Now that we have a definition for what a project actually is, meaning it's temporary, it has a start and an end date, and it does something unique, then it's quite obvious that the definition of operations is something that's continuous, something that continues day in and day out. What I like to do is do a comparison of projects to operations. I look at how an organization actually works. Most organizations have objectives, strategies to achieve those, and goals that they want to achieve as being part of an organization. The reason why they are an organization, or the reason why they're in business. I look at this from an operational standpoint, that they have business orders, things that they need to do. In order to fulfill those orders, they consume dollars, time, people, and resources. And at the end of that, they produce some finished goods that they give off to their customers. And that just continues on, and that's how they stay in business, and that's the definition of operations. Continuously producing things to get finished goods to sell to customers. Now, a project looks a little bit differently. It doesn't have finished business orders. It has ideas or new requirements. But just like operations, it consumes dollars, time, people, resources. But instead of producing a finished good, it may produce a thing called a deliverable. We'll talk a little bit about what the deliverable is in a minute. But those deliverables hopefully will become finished products and become operation at some point in time. Now that we have a definition of what a project is and what operations are, I'm just going to go through and ask you these questions, and you can tell me whether or not they are a project or an operations. I'll display the answer on the screen, but think of it yourself and maybe jot it down. Quarterly inventory review. Is that a project or is that operation? Well, it's kind of operations. It could be a project if we want to learn something from it, but normally it's called operations. How about the annual awards event? The annual awards event, project or operation? Again, could be operations. Improving productivity by 10%. Most definitely a project. Moving the warehouse operations to a new building. Well, that by default has to be a project. Expanding to a new market has to be a project. Because projects have a start and end. And so once we've identified here, obviously have a start and end. The quarterly inventory review and annual awards could also be a project, but normally they're operations. They'd only become a project if we want to learn something in order to improve that process. Now that we have a clear definition of what a project is, the next thing we have to be clear on is what is project management. Well, again, according to the Project Management Institute, the body of knowledge, it is the application of knowledge, skills, tools, and techniques to project activities to meet project requirements. So it's taken all our knowledge, taken all our skills, taken all our experiences, taken all of those things, and applying that to the end result to get our deliverables. That is what project management is. I've mentioned the term deliverables a few times. A deliverable is simply a verifiable output or result of the project, something that we produce as part of doing the project. Not necessarily the end result, not even necessarily the reason why we started the project. It just could simply be a component within that particular project. Let me see if I can give you an example. Let's say we're building a brand new car, and the car has many components within it. But our deliverable is going to be the steering column. So our deliverable here is merely producing the steering mechanism, so that is part of the overall project of producing the car. That is a deliverable. It may not get the actual result of having sales for the car, but is deliverable within that. Now that we know what a deliverable is, there's a word that's associated with deliverables, and that's benefit. And benefits are not what you might think. A benefit is not the benefit of the project itself. Again, the benefit is an outcome that may be achieved through the use of the deliverable. So you produce the deliverable, which is a component within the whole project, and the benefit is something that may or may not be achieved by the use of that deliverable. And each deliverable should have benefits within it. And it's not always achieved, but the hope is that if you make a deliverable and you go through the process and you create a deliverable, that it achieves the desired outcome. The next thing I want to talk about, the term I want to talk about, is one of the most powerful terms that we actually have by definition, and that is the word assumptions. It's the most powerful tool we as project managers actually have, because often what happens in a project, we're given a project, but we don't know everything about that project, and we don't have time actually to go and explore and to find out the absolute truth about a particular thing. What we have to do is make an assumption that it is true, whatever that we're assuming is true, and continue on. And this allows us to continue on and not wait until we get a decision from somebody or we get the truth about a particular thing. Now, some people said that's kind of dangerous to do that, but it's the only way we can actually get going on a project, because there are a lot of unknowns. Now let me give you an example of this. Often when we start a project, we don't even know what the budget is. We don't know how much money we actually have to spend. We may have a ballpark, but we don't know how much money we actually have to spend. So as a project manager, what we do is we assume that the project budget is going to be approved. That allows us to continue on and start to do some work on that particular project. Now, the beauty of that is it allows us to get going. But the second part of that, if the budget is not approved, as we've defined it for X number of dollars, say it's shortened by 100,000, then we have the right to go back and redo our work that we've done based on that incorrect assumption. So the power of assumption is simply this. It allows you to get going. And if that assumption is not true, then you get to redo whatever that assumption, the details of that assumption were based on. Very, very powerful. This is the end of some key terminology to do with project management. I hope you enjoyed this section. You can always come back to this. And we also have at the end and under resources, we have a project terminology if you would like to have a look at that too. Let's continue on to the next lesson.